Two massive Boeing 747s, once meant to become the next Air Force One, are sitting abandoned in the desert. They were bought at a bargain, meant to fly the President of the United States, but they never took off. Now, one of them may be replaced by a gold-trimmed luxury jet gifted from a foreign government, and the story only gets stranger from here. Since 1990, two aircrafts have carried the title Air Force One, tail numbers 28,000 and 29,000. These are VC-25As, custom-modified Boeing 747-200Bs, built to be flying command centers, not just transport. Their interiors include private presidential suites, staff offices, secure conference rooms, and even a full medical bay. Missile defense systems? Yup. Hardened communication lines? Absolutely. In case of nuclear war, they've got in-air refueling probes, so they never have to land. But here's the issue. Pushing 35 years now, and it shows. The avionics are dated. Replacement parts for certain onboard systems are no longer even manufactured. That's not just inconvenience, it's dangerous. One major failure in a legacy component mid-flight could be a disaster. And this isn't a regional jet we're talking about. This is the president's lifeline during wartime or national emergency. The price tag to keep them airborne is brutal. The Air Force reports that it costs over $177,000 per flight hour to operate a VC-25A. Every single minute in the air bleeds roughly $3,000. That's fuel, maintenance, specialized crew, and the constant need to test and recalibrate classified defense systems. These aren't just pilots and flight attendants. These are military-trained personnel with security clearances and job-specific training for presidential operations. And even with that, maintenance crews have to work harder each year. Diagnostics don't always speak the same language as modern tech. It's like running a Cold War supercomputer with iPhone chargers. Things get messy. And the real headache comes with the fact that its custom build requires years, billions of dollars, and levels of bureaucracy that would crush most commercial projects. Congress knows the planes are aging. The Air Force knows it. But fixing it? That's another beast entirely. In 2015, the US Air Force made its move. It selected the Boeing 747-8i. The idea was straightforward. Take a longer range, more modern jet and turn it into Air Force One 2.0. Two planes were ordered in 2018 for $3.9 billion. The new designation? VC-25B. These new aircraft were supposed to fix everything. Everything the aging VC-25As were struggling to do, but better, faster, cheaper to operate. That was the promise. The reality? Still no planes. The original timeline aims for a rollout in 2024. That's not happening. New projections pushed the first delivery to 2027 and the second possibly 2029. That's nearly 5 years from the original order date. In a world where tech becomes outdated in months, that kind of delay is massive. To find out what's the reason behind all this delay, make sure to watch the full video to the end. Here's where things get weird. Around 2015, Boeing had built two gleaming 747-8i aircraft for Transaero, a Russian airline with big dreams and terrible finances. Before the jets were delivered, Transaero collapsed. The planes, nearly brand new, were mothballed and parked in Victorville, California, a stretch of desert better known for storing old jets than presidential ones. They sat there for 2 years. Massive, pristine 747s going nowhere. Boeing still owned the jets, tail numbers N894BA and N895BA, and no commercial buyer was lined up. Then, in a twist of timing, the US Air Force showed up. Looking for a way to cut costs and speed up the VC-25B program, they saw an opportunity. Trump, ever the businessman, wanted a deal. The Air Force bought both airframes, reportedly well below the standard $387 million list price of a new 747-8. One of them was flown to Landlac Air Force Base in San Antonio by March 2019, where modification work began. It was a smart move, at least on paper. Instead of starting from scratch, use already built jets and pour the billions into retrofitting. But here's the catch. Even though the airframes were ready, almost nothing inside was up to presidential standards. Everything from wiring to shielding had to be torn out, re-engineered, and rebuilt to meet military-grade specifications. Not just comfy seats and a new paint job. We're talking EMP shielding, encrypted global communications, countermeasure systems, and battlefield resilience. This wasn't about luxury, it was about survival. The media called them abandoned jets, but that's not really accurate. They weren't junkyard relics, they were untouched giants waiting for a second life. And for a moment, it looked like these Russian leftovers were going to become the face of American presidential air power. That's leverage. That's strategy. That's the US military turning another country's failed airline into a strategic win. Fast forward to February 2025, the VC-25B timeline was dragging. Trump, impatient as ever, toured an ultra-luxury 747-8i, tail number P4HBJ, originally built in 2012 for the Qatari royal family. Qatar had gifted it, decked out with plush private lounges, guest suites, even a master bedroom. Trump toured the plane in West Palm Beach, Florida, spending just over an hour aboard the gold-trimmed yacht-level interior. According to Reuters and AP, the aircraft had been formally transferred by Qatar. His reaction? We may go and buy a plane. He didn't couch it in politics. It was showmanship, a red flag to Boeing. Get this done or I'll do it myself. This jet isn't militarized, but with upgrades it could serve for appearances, domestic tours, or campaign stops. The Pentagon estimated a $400 million conversion price tag, but many defense analysts call this wildly optimistic, because the Qatar jet lacks all of the hardened security features that define Air Force One, like EMP shielding, battlefield comms, and countermeasure systems. Some estimates say the true cost could exceed $1 billion. Reports suggest that some of the retrofit funding was quietly pulled from other defense programs, including the Sentinel ICBM modernization effort, a move that sparked ethics concerns and political backlash in Congress. Ethics groups have also pointed out Trump's stated plan to donate the plane to his future presidential library after his term. That turns a foreign-built luxury jet into a publicly funded political trophy. There's no single reason the VC-25B program is behind schedule. It's dead by 1,000 cuts. The pandemic crushed the supply chain. Contractors couldn't meet deadlines. Raw material costs soared. Boeing even reported losses of over $2 billion just on this deal. On the other side, President Trump, who had initially touted the Air Force One replacements as a way to cut costs, found himself watching the price skyrocket and the timeline slip like wet rope. As of now, both VC-25Bs exist, but they're stuck in modification hell. The real headache: retrofitting civilian aircraft to military specs. It's not just bolting on extra armor. Engineers had to rework shielding, wiring, fuselage reinforcement, everything. Some plans had to be redrawn from scratch. And with every new threat, cyber warfare, drones, hypersonic missiles, new tech kept being added, pushing deadlines further. Boeing's Steve Parker now says they're close to locking in the design, but even his most optimistic estimate? 2027, long after the original deadline. Perhaps not too late since President Trump began his second tenure just this year. Air Force One isn't just a plane. It's the single most recognizable aircraft on Earth. It's a flying White House, a command post in the sky, and a bold projection of American power. When it shows up on a runway, anywhere in the world, nations notice. Cameras roll, leaders stand at attention, and that didn't happen by accident. From the beginning, every version of the president's aircraft has been more than just transport, it's been a message. Start with Franklin D. Roosevelt's C-54 Skymaster, known as the Sacred Cow. It debuted during World War II, outfitted with a lift for FDR's wheelchair, a practical aircraft, but also a symbol of wartime strength. Then came Truman's C-118 Independence, painted with a bald eagle on the nose, flying across a post-war world with confidence. That was America showing the world it had survived the war and was now taking the lead. Eisenhower upgraded to Lockheed Constellations, sleek aircraft with triple tails and Cold War glam. After a near miss with a commercial plane sharing the same call sign, his staff coined a term that would echo through history: Air Force One. That call sign wasn't just clever, it was necessary. A real-time signal that the aircraft carried the president and that nothing else in the sky should get in its way. Kennedy's SAM 26000 came next, and it changed everything. Designed by Raymond Loewy, the blue and white paint scheme with the bold United States of America along the fuselage gave Air Force One its iconic look. That same aircraft carried JFK to Berlin for his Ich bin ein Berliner speech, then to Dallas, and then to Washington with his body after the assassination. It was the plane where Lyndon B. Johnson was sworn in, mid-air. That jet isn't just history, it is history. Then came Nixon's SAM 27000, the one that flew him to China for his famous diplomatic breakthrough, and then brought him home after Watergate. Each version of Air Force One reflected its moment in history: post-war optimism, Cold War tensions, jet age superiority. The VC-25B program isn't dead. It's still crawling forward, piece by piece. We already know that the timeline sits somewhere between 2027 and 2029. However, the Qatar jet retrofit is already underway. L3 Harris Technologies, a defense contractor, was tapped to begin upgrading the jet with secure communications and limited military modifications. The Air Force quietly approved funding to start converting the aircraft, pulling money from other programs, including the Sentinel missile system upgrade, which raised a lot of eyebrows in defense circles. But make no mistake, this jet will never be Air Force One in the formal sense. It's a backup, an attention grabber, a potential campaign tool. The fact that the aircraft was originally owned by the former Qatari Prime Minister and might become part of a US presidential library library has triggered questions about gifts, conflicts of interest, and national optics. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer even went on record calling it a dark day when presidential aircraft become symbols of blurred lines between diplomacy and personal brand building. Fallout from delays, rising costs, and symbol versus security debates raise big questions. Are homogeneous 747s still best for presidential travel? What about lower cost, lower profile jets like 777X or 787? They have better fuel efficiency, modern avionics, but less prestige. Boeing's own people have called it an albatross. It's fair to ask, do we really need a giant 4-engine monster jet just for presidential travel anymore? Let's talk costs. Boeing's losing hundreds of millions on this fixed price deal, and with all the delays, the new Air Force One won't be ready until 2029, way past the current administration. So is it worth sticking to these jumbo jets? Now check this. Modern jets like the Boeing 777X or 787 are way more fuel efficient. These jets use advanced engines and composite wings that cut fuel burn by up to 20% per seat, and Boeing claims up to 33% lower costs per seat than a 747. They're cheaper to buy and cheaper to run. Sure, the 747's size projects power and offers space for secure communications, but let's be real, it's tradition, not necessity. Modern twins have insane reliability, and all presidential planes need heavy-duty security upgrades anyway. So here's the big debate. Prestige and space, or stealth, efficiency, and a lighter bill for taxpayers? What's your take on this? Share your comments below.